All right, Pasadenans, it is I, your friendly neighborhood Rabbi John Carrier, and in just a moment we are going to start RabbiChat live, presented to you by Pasadena Jewish Temple and Center. It is my great joy to join you live via Twitch TV, YouTube, and Facebook today, and we're going to have a brief musical interlude, then we're going to jump right into today's topic, which is can I pray at home? This is part of the FAQ these days. Can I pray at home? Is that a Jewish thing to do? And we'll talk about why it is a very Jewish thing to do. What kind of modifications you might make to either your home or to your prayer in that context. But just however we can make it more comfortable for you and easy for you. We'll get to that right after this brief musical interlude. Stick around. Sorry, I was just dancing to our theme music. It's very good to see all of you, to read all of you. This is I was going to say this is a live call-in show. It's more of a live type-in show here at the PJTC RabbiChat show. It is I, your friendly neighborhood Rabbi John Carrier. I am delighted to be connecting with you on the internet live as we speak. And I'm going to say, if you're not used to a live show, you can have surprises. Sometimes I might even make mistakes or say things that don't make sense. But I'm going to try to make as much sense as possible, as I'm sure will you. I want to give some shout out to my friends who are already joining us in the chat. We have Nawa64 and D. Alexin. I know both of them joining us from Colorado. Triggers and Viv from Washington State, an epicenter, if you will. Really glad to have you here, Trig. And let's go check out the multi-chat. We have this set up so that I'm broadcasting from a service called Twitch, which can be found at twitch.tv, and you can find us at twitch.tv, as in television, / Pasadena Jewish. So look for us there. Follow us on Twitch. That's a nice thing to do. You can maybe sign up for a Twitch account if you want to. You don't have to join us. You can join us on Facebook Live. You can join us on YouTube Live. That's cool too. But if you sign up on Twitch and you follow us, then that unlocks some things that we could do in the live stream here. So I want to encourage people to do that. We got Triggers and Viv, D. Alexin, Nawa64, some of my old friends from my own Twitch show that I do on Fridays, the Jew Curious show, where on Fridays we have Fun Fridays, which is pretty much like this, with more video games. So I haven't decided yet. I need to talk to the board. I need to talk to the ritual committee to see if it's okay with them if their rabbi plays video games on the PJTC channel. It's all friendly stuff, ESRB 10 and up only. Some popular titles have included Mario Kart, Super Mario Odyssey. What else have we done? We've done Splatoon 2, kind of a very stylized game. It's a little bit like shooting, but it's more like squirting paint on people. And lately we've been playing Zelda, Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, which is one of my all-time favorite games at this point. Just this big open universe. But that's another topic for another time. Today we are going to talk about Jewish prayer at home. Before we do, I highly recommend, if you're just seeing us for the first time on the PJTC Facebook page, that you like our page. Let us know that we're doing a good job here, and also that way you'll see updates when they happen. Sometimes, I don't know how Facebook algorithm works. I don't work there. I work for a synagogue. So you can also subscribe on YouTube. I know that when you subscribe on YouTube to the PJTC YouTube channel, you do get notified when we're doing new stuff. You can even hit a little notify button to make sure you get immediately notified when we go live on live stuff. Or you can follow us on Twitch. And it's my understanding that on Twitch, you get a notification on your video watching device, whatever that may be, whenever we go live. So we see we have a great question here to start off with. We'll just do some questions from the crowd. Are there kosher Jewish video games? Trig says, the one with the swan, or was it I'm just going to go ahead and translate here for you, duck, or a goose, I think. Yes, Untitled Goose Game. Let's see, I think that's a pretty kosher game. It's got a goose in it, and geese are kosher as long as they are harvested in a kosher way. And so that's a pretty kosher game. I'm trying to think of trafe games. There was playing Mario Rabbids Invasion mashup. You weren't really eating anything, so you don't have to worry too much about kashrut there. I did play Overcooked one time, and I don't know if I played Overcooked streaming it. Overcooked is a fun family game. It's a great game, multiplayer, good to play with a spouse or a child. I did read the reviews ahead of time and then found this out for myself. Sometimes it's a great game for starting a fight with your family because you are playing against the clock as a team and you're relying on each other, and sometimes that gets some great teamwork going, and sometimes it's like, you were supposed to chop the tomatoes, why weren't you chopping the tomatoes? That kind of discussion. And keep in mind, you're not actually eating it. It's not real food, but there are some, let's say, trafe recipes. There's a lot of cheeseburgers, a lot of pepperoni pizza in that game. I'm not sure about pork per se. There's definitely shellfish involved in some of the sushi levels. So in any case, yes, there can be some unkosher video games or video games that teach, let's say, recipes that aren't in keeping with the book of Leviticus. We'll put it that way. But in any case, we'll talk about video games some other time. That might be something that we add to this channel if people are interested, or won't add to this channel if people are drastically opposed to it. I also want to honor the audience that we have. Let's see, Nawa64 says, the hubby wants me to ask the rabbi, what is the Jewish response to the woman who admittedly exposed our son's supervisor to COVID-19 at his workplace? I'm going to say admittedly exposed our son's supervisor to COVID-19 at his workplace. Let's see. I don't know if that's, I want to make a fine distinction here between admittedly and maliciously. So if maliciously, shame on you. That's my response. I'm not going to speak on behalf of my community or the entirety of the rabbinate. God forbid anybody is sort of maliciously saying, achoo, take that, like now you're COVIDed. That's awful. And I'm only even talking about this because we've actually gotten reports at the synagogue from the ADL, that is the Anti-Defamation League, which connects to just about all synagogues and Jewish institutions, giving us updates, giving us like intelligence, what's on the horizon, what kind of threats are different groups facing. We did get a report from the ADL that there have been some hate groups intentionally targeting Jews and police, or at least, talking about it. I don't know if they pulled any of this off, but they're intentionally targeting Jews and police with, let's say, weaponized coronavirus, meaning going into places and spitting and sneezing and doing that kind of stuff. That's terrible. So, the response is, I'm not in the position to put any handcuffs on anybody. Death penalty, we pretty much abrogated, or rather found better solutions in Masechet Sanhedrin in the Talmud. Don't do that. That's what I'll say. Like, be careful right now. If you have something, say something, I think is the punchline here. We do have a responsibility toward one another. And I've been teaching this for a couple of weeks now. We're not at that parsha yet, but Tazria, in Parshat Tazria in the book of Leviticus, where we are, it says, if you have a thing, it's specifically talking about sa'arat, this skin condition that gets sort of mistranslated as leprosy. It's not Hansen's disease. That's a neurological disorder. Sa'arat, communicable, but different from what they were talking about. Sa'arat is more of a physical manifestation of a spiritual deficit, that is the respect for the dignity of other persons. And if you have this thing, you're supposed to let people know. You're supposed to walk through, you're supposed to dress differently and wear your hair differently and walk through town saying, I got the thing, please stay away. And that has two purposes. One is you owe it to your community to protect them by not just keeping your distance, but letting people know your status. And I know that's hard. right? There have been, articles written by people who had to go inform people of their situation. And it can be embarrassing. Like if you know that you've exposed people, it's a, I'm not going to tell you it's a sin or it's a commandment that you have to do a certain thing. It's the ethical thing to do, to let people know. But it's not just about letting people know, and it's not just about ostracizing yourself. The commentary from trying to think which Talmud tractate it came out of. It escapes me. I sent it out in some source materials earlier, but it's not just about letting people know you have this thing so that they can keep their distance. It's also laying some responsibility on the community to care for you, right? Whether it's bringing you soup or whether it's just prayer, right? Let people know so that they can pray for you. In some sense, it was the responsible thing to do to tell people that this happened. But if the person said, don't tell so-and-so I have the COVID and I've been, making a sandwich for them, that's not necessarily responsible. So, it's better that the information is out there than not out there. I'll say that. And I think it has to go into the intentionality of it. Hey, I see Carla J is in the house on YouTube, so I know her multicast is working. So, we want to be loving and compassionate, but really, be loving. So let's try to get everybody on the loving and compassionate page if we can. We need to be loving and compassionate to people who are suffering. And if you are suffering, you also need to be loving and compassionate by being as safe as you possibly can. And that's a hard line to walk. I'm not going to judge any particular case on this. I'm not the judge. There is one judge. That's part of my faith. And all I know for sure is that it's not me. So, I want to just pray for everybody's healing in your family. God willing, everybody's safe. I got some unsettling and then resettling news that I think both of my sons may have been exposed to it, and they were sick and had all the symptoms. I haven't had any contact with them personally because they live in different states. One lives in Oregon, one lives in Alaska, and they told me that they had the symptoms, but there are no tests available to them. So they recovered before any testing. Maybe there are tests there now. I don't know. I'm not a doctor, but they seem to have had the symptoms that people are having and have recovered from them. I'm not making any forecasts as to the recoverability. I'm not minimizing the people who are suffering with it. I'm just saying this probably happened. That my heart just like the bottom dropped out of it for a little bit till I got in touch with them, and they're okay. And so I was sort of resettled after being unsettled. And so thank God people are good. Baruch Hashem. So they're in their 20s. They've got other hard problems to go through. They didn't need this one. So thank you all for being here. Really appreciate it. I want to get onto the topic that I want to share today in an adult B'nai Mitzvah class at PJTC. That's Pasadena Jewish Temple and Center. Cantor Ruth and I teach an adult B'nai Mitzvah class. There's 11 people who are adults, let's say. They're older than 13. That's as specific as I want to get. And they are all preparing to celebrate being B'nai Mitzvah. And, that just to make it clear to people, it's like once you are older than the Jewish age of, halachic majority, meaning you don't get car keys and have to get a job and get kicked out of your house or anything. You're not an adult in that sense, but you are legally liable to the mitzvot, to the commandments that are in the Torah. And according to the rabbis in the time of the Talmud, this was 12 for girls and 13 for boys, with a little wiggle room based on, people's physical development and intellectual and moral maturity. But that was like the standard age. So once you reach this age, you are bar mitzvah or bat mitzvah. And so often an adult B'nai Mitzvah class is with people who either different circumstances. Maybe they've been Jewish their whole life. Their family wasn't connected to those kinds of rituals at the time when they were that age. And so they're sort of recovering that later in life. Very, very typically Jewish thing to have happen. Maybe it's people, women people who, this was a big wave of adult B'nai Mitzvah in the not so distant past, women who came of age in a synagogue that didn't had those kind of celebrations for men, but not for women. And so some of our students are like that. And some people who convert to Judaism. And so people who convert to Judaism after the age of 13 probably didn't have this opportunity, and now they're taking this opportunity. All of them are adults. All of them are considered bar mitzvah or bat mitzvah. However, I think it's a really holy and wonderful thing when, I'll say, anybody takes on the kind of learning that these folks are taking on, building up your synagogue skills, learning how to think critically about Torah, and learn how to teach Torah to other people, which is what these students are learning. So that's a bit of a long plug for the Adult B'nai Mitzvah class. We're about halfway through, so I'm not trying to get you to join the class. We've got enough work to do. But I'll say, if it's something you're thinking about, let us know, and maybe you could be in the next cycle. So we're talking about things like learning how to chant Torah, but we're also talking about philosophical things like, what's your conception of God? What's your approach, or what's been your experience with Jewish prayer? And this past week, we were taking kind of a virtual tour of the synagogue. My intention when we wrote this curriculum was to take people on an actual tour of the synagogue, to take a little field trip from the woman lounge or the woman area where we do a lot of classes, walk into the sanctuary, point at things and touch things, and maybe stand within 6 feet of each other. That was the original plan. Instead, over Zoom, I showed a picture of the sanctuary and we pointed out different things. But I also wanted to set the intention of, how do you make a sanctuary at home? And that, now more than ever, can be critical. I'll just share, again, not to either brag or complain, but just to report. I'm in it with a lot of you in the sense that my wife and I are 2 full-time professionals. Thank God we still have jobs, and we're working from home full-time, both of us. And we have 2 children who are school age, who have been off of school for, I don't know, like a week or 2 weeks at this point. And we have a very modest 2-bedroom apartment. And so we're a little bit on top of each other. I've got my wired Wi-Fi my wired internet connection in here because, 4 people somehow generates 8 different Wi-Fi devices, I guess, at one time. So, not for nothing, it feels like every once in a while you need a little bit of sanctuary. I was reading this piece in the New Yorker saying, this is going to be a real strain on relationships. It's going to be a strain on marriages, and people are expecting, after this, God forbid, there may be a little bump up in separations and things like that. And one solution that was offered in this article was that you should isolate, you should quarantine within your quarantine. Like, if possible, everybody should find a little place in their home that's their place, that if you need some private time from the people you are now spending a lot of time with, that's a good thing, right? And so it's possible to make a sanctuary at home. And we've got some great questions here. I think their questions are being answered. That's why I love this chat, is because people can talk to each other even while I'm talking, and it's not like a regular classroom where I frown upon that sort of thing. But I love it when people chat in here. It's possible to carve out a piece of space that's all your own for any number of things. My partner in life is at this moment either working or doing jigsaw puzzles. Because it's a working day, she's probably working. But she makes a place to do a jigsaw puzzle, and that's how she relieves some of this stress. What's that? And she runs, and I run too, not as fast. That's pretty clear. But so we have different ways to spend some time on our own, even as we're spending a lot of time together. So what does that mean for Jewish prayer? Well, it's equally possible to carve out a space in your home that you can make it a sanctuary, in the sense that the synagogue sanctuary is a sanctuary. I'll say especially, but not exclusively, if you're joining us for our services via live stream. So this week, like last week, we're live streaming our services. It might be a little bit different this week because we've been kind of working on the matbea to make it safest for everybody. We might be doing the service a little bit differently this week than we did last week, just to not have people standing so close together. But anyway, we're live streaming that. If you want to join us at home, or if you're praying by yourself, which is also totally kosher, either way, it helps if you carve out a place in your home that you pray from, right? Or that you pray in. I don't know the right preposition here. When you pray at home, which is totally fine. This is something that was kind of new to me coming to Judaism as an adult, where, a lot of, I would say there was like grace before meals and things like that, but the bulk of our prayer was done in a particular building on a particular day at a particular time. And that was the building that you prayed in. And that's not exclusively a Jewish experience. Many people feel, kind of weird praying, especially praying the same prayers at home that they're accustomed to doing in the synagogue. But I'll tell you, over our history, as my dad always talks about different phases in Jewish history as the times of temples and the times of tents. Right, we've gone kind of back and forth. When we left Egypt, that was about 40 years of tents. And then a little bit after, a couple of kings later with David, we actually with Solomon, his son, we got a temple. And then that got destroyed, and we got exiled, and we were in tents for a while. And then we came back and built another temple, and then the Romans schmeiced that. And then we spent a couple of thousand years wandering and, building like little synagogues and stuff here and there, but being itinerant, being mobile, having to be flexible with the spaces that we used. And I was going to say, despite that, but really because of that and reinforcing that, is that we've gotten terribly good at taking whatever we have, where we are, and creating holiness out of it. And one way to do this is having what the rabbis call a makom kavua. This means a fixed place. And this is true whether you're in the synagogue or not in the synagogue. If you've ever gone to a synagogue and you sat down and somebody said, "Oh, you're sitting in my seat," that's not just being annoying. Although sometimes it is annoying, but there's actually a principle whereby you should try, when you're attending a synagogue, you should try to sit in the same place every time, because that then sets aside the decision of where you're going to sit, and you can more quickly zero in on the intentionality and the presence of prayer. Right? You don't have to worry, this spot doesn't have as much light as that spot, or, now there's a draft here and now I'm totally distracted. If you sit in the same place in the synagogue every time, you sort of train your body, train your nerves like, I'm sitting in this spot, that means it's prayer time, and you can jump right into it. You can do the same thing at home. And you don't have to have this big palatial home where you have a special room carved out for prayer, or even a 3 by 3 foot zone carved for prayer. You could do it in a place that you do other things. The key is that when you're praying, you're in that spot. So it might be, your place at the dining room table where you eat your meals, and maybe perhaps increasingly are conducting your business or getting on Zoom conference calls with people for fun or profit. But that could also be your prayer place. The idea is that you don't only pray in that place, but whenever you pray, you're in that place. And that's the first step in creating an intentional prayer space in your home. Another nice thing to do is find east. There's a Jewish custom of long standing that when we pray, we should pray facing the east. And this is true sometimes, and I've discovered there are some synagogues, and I've worked in a couple of them, where just based on the architecture of the space, the ark wasn't in the eastern wall, so you weren't necessarily facing east. So the rule is, if you're in a sanctuary and the ark isn't in the east, you should face, you should face the ark, wherever the ark is. But if you're in a place that doesn't have an ark, you should. Or the ark is not in the east, you should face east. And this is true if you're at home. This is true if you're, out in a wheat field somewhere, just constructing a baseball diamond so that they will come, I guess. Wherever you are, if you can pray east, that is ideal. And the neat thing is, and I was not a Boy Scout by any stretch of the imagination. I do own a compass now, but just for my own hipster purposes. But I have an iPhone, and that makes it super easy to find east. If you have an iPhone, not get no money from the iPhone people. Google phones probably do this too. You should find your fixed place and make it a place that's comfortable for you to find and face east while you're praying. And it's not because East necessarily is magical, but it's to give you an orientation that is connecting you to the larger Jewish community. This goes back to a passage in the Mishnah that says, if you are out in the diaspora somewhere, if you're out in Galut, if you're not in the land of Israel, when you pray, you should be, if you don't know where Israel is, you should try to face east, right? If you know where Israel is, you should face toward Israel. If you are in the land of Israel, you should pray in the direction of Jerusalem. If you are in Jerusalem, you should pray in the direction of the Temple Mount. And if you're on the Temple Mount, within the temple itself, you should pray in the direction of the Kadosh Kadoshim, the Holy of Holies. And if you're in the Holy of Holies, if you were standing inside the Holy of Holies, you might be like, okay, my compass is going to spin here. What do I face if I'm inside the Holy of Holies? You don't have to worry about that. You have other things to worry about because Mazel Tov, you are the Kohen Gadol, because that's the only person who's allowed in there. So the rest of us, East is a nice place to face. You can even you can buy these things called mizrachim, or things called a mizrach, which is just a word that means east in Hebrew. And I have one in my office. It's like a little ceramic tile piece of art. You can also see these in embroidery or quilting and things like that. It's just a little thing you might see on a wall in a Jewish home that signifies if you're facing this piece of art, that's east. And so you can see this when you come into my office at PJTC. God willing, I'll have people in my office at PJTC again someday. So if you can find a fixed place where you can face east, that is a great way to set up a Jewish prayer space. And more on the orientation aspect of this, the word orientation it was related to the word orient, which is related to I want to say Latin maybe, or Greek. I'm Hebrew's about all I can manage. That means orientation means facing east, or from the word orient. And the idea is not even necessarily to face east, it's that everybody should be facing in the same direction. And I think that's a powerful thing. If you're praying at home, that you're facing the same direction that every other Jew in town, country, continent, whatever, is facing at that, perhaps at that same moment. So these are a couple of different ways that you can carve out some holy place in your home. The more intentional you can make it, just make it kind of a neat, orderly place, not with too much schmutz, not with too much noise. You are legally allowed to pray in almost any room in your house. We don't encourage people to pray in the bathroom. This again goes back to the time of the Mishnah and the Talmud, when plumbing and sanitation wasn't as advanced as it is now. This is the reason why we don't carry a talit into the bathroom, not because the tallis itself shouldn't be exposed to that stuff, but because the tallis often has a prayer written on it in Hebrew with God's name, and we don't have that in the same room as, let's say, biological necessity is how we'll put that. So just about any other room in your house, you can turn into a makom kavua, a fixed prayer space. Order it in a way that helps you connect to prayer, not have too many distractions. Maybe that's not the room where the Xbox One is, for example, not assuming that all of you are as crazy about this as I am. Got a great so those are some ways that you can pray at home. I want to take a comment from the chat and then jump into how you might modify the prayers that you're saying and what prayers are you allowed to say at home. So Kathy Chavez Morris says, hi, Rabbi, I'm a Catholic, coming in from Facebook. Hi, I'm a Catholic in an interfaith marriage. I would like to know what your center will have for children online for the holy days. I think the silver lining is being able to attend services and events at other religious centers. I made this remark in one of my sermons this past Shabbat that, the good news about all this, and looking for whatever good news we can get, is that now more than ever, people who aren't Jewish can see what Jewish services are really like. I was talking about the ADL earlier and people who are being nasty to and about Jews and things like that. And I think all of this anti-Semitic stuff, and that's not the basis of your question, but just a side benefit, let's say, I think all of this anti-Semitic stuff is bred in a vacuum of knowledge. It's bred in darkness and in ignorance. And people say, well, the Jews are still sacrificing animals. Didn't you read the Old Testament? Haven't done that in about 2,000 years. Hate to break it to you. But I think the more people can see Jewish services and see they're singing and praying and we're singing and praying and they have bread and wine at the end and we have bread and wine at the end. I think there's an opportunity for us to get to know each other a lot better. And I said this in my sermon, I don't normally encourage people to go to church, but now you have the opportunity to see what a church service looks like. And I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing, right? I'm not worried about losing people in, some sort of branding competition or whatever. I think it's actually cool if Jews know what Christians pray like, and I think it's cool if Christians know what Jews pray like. So I think that's a tremendous opportunity that Kathy's pointing out. What will our center have online for the holy days? That's TBD. We don't know. We're trying to get through this week. We're trying to get through the next month. We have been making adjustments on a week-by-week basis as to what our services look like in the coming week. And we've made some adjustments for this week to come. I can say that we're probably not going to be having, let's say, open to the public services for Pesach, because Pesach isn't just about, having fun eating at home, although that's a big part of it. There's also holiday services. And so, we'll, the cantor and I, and possibly some other parts of our davening team will be there, but we won't have, and we'll be live streaming it. So I don't know. And in I'll say the next major holiday, we've got Tisha B'Av that comes up. That'll be interesting to see how we mark the holiday of Tisha B'Av in this new way. And God forbid we're still in this kind of safer at home situation. I hope we're all safer. I hope we all still have homes. I can't tell you whether we're still going to be in this same situation when it comes to the High Holy Days. If we do, it's going to be a big challenge for us because High Holy Days is legit the biggest attendance celebrations of the Jewish year. Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur are our largest attendance of the whole year. And what would that be like to do those? And the cantor and I and the davening team and the volunteers, we love being together. We get energy from all the people who are in the room, and it's a wonderful, holy experience. And it could be completely different. I'm not making policy or making predictions or anything like that. But I like to think that whatever we do, and this is true whether we're doing it in person or not, we'll be live streaming it so that people can take part that way. So thank you for a great question. Whatever we're doing it in public, and that's kind of the new normal now. So again, I can't tell you exactly what that's going to be like, what the links are, but I do know that the High Holy Days aren't canceled, that they just may not look exactly like they did last year. So hopefully they'll be better. I don't know. We'll see. So D. Willexon, who's ever the scholar, points out that orient is a Latin word. Triggers and Biv says, I have to go. Have a peaceful rest of your day. Much love and shalom. Thank you so much for that. So I hope I've given you some insight into how to pray at home. Sometimes people ask me what to pray at home. What are some prayers that I can do at home, just like I do in the synagogue? What are some prayers that I can't say at home? Is that a thing? And so I'll say traditionally, there are certain prayers that are part of the Jewish service that we reserve for when we have a minyan. And a minyan, it's not the little yellow guy from the cartoon shaped like a Twinkie with one eye and a goggle. A minyan is a Hebrew word for a quorum. And there are certain prayers that we only say when we have a quorum of 10 Jewish adults. And those are probably most prominent in people's mind is the Kaddish prayer, and especially the Kaddish Tome, or the mourner's Kaddish, if you will. And so if you're praying at home by yourself, and this is all kind of, pre-COVID reasoning, I want to give you the bederach klal, like the normal way of doing things, before I give you some adjustments that we're making now. It was considered that if you were praying by yourself at home, which is totally a kosher thing to do, you would do the prayers that you do in the synagogue, but you would skip things like the Baruch Hu, which is a collective call to prayer, which is usually only done with a minyan. But that's one line out of a long service of the blessings before and after the Shema and the Shema itself. In the Amidah, if you do part of the Amidah, now the Amidah is at its core a private meditation. In some contexts, in some public contexts, it's repeated out loud, or maybe the first couple of pages is said out loud. That's usually only done with a minyan. But the entirety of the Amidah, you can pray by yourself privately. When it comes to Kaddish, you typically say that when you have a minyan. And this isn't, to be clear, as my teacher, Rabbi Ed Feinstein said, this isn't, to punish people. This isn't to give mourners, for example, a job to do. These things were instituted not to punish or restrict. They were instituted to encourage us to take part in community, right? So it's a good thing that we have prayers where we are highly encouraged to be in community to say them. Now, so that's sort of that's the usual, that's, Baruch Hu, part of the Amidah, the Torah service, reading the Torah in public, saying the blessings before the Torah reading, and the various iterations of the Kaddish. Those are kinds of things that we would do with a minyan. Now, what if you want to say those things, but you can't get to a physical minyan? And that is the situation that we're that's the situation that we're in right now. I see Stacy Gilbert Sharp has joined us from PJTC, has a great question. I just want to answer this question real quick on minyan, and then we'll get right to that. It's a good one. So now people are being more flexible than they have been in the past. And when I say people, I mean rabbis. Rabbis are people too, but also people who want to follow Jewish law in a traditional way. Even the most traditional among us are saying, if you can get people together over certain, let's say, two-way telecommunicative devices like Zoom, like a conference call setup, where you can hear other people and other people are present in real time. In this time that we live in, that is not only the safest way to make minyan, it may be the only way that's open to people. And so if you can get 10 Jews together, 10 adult Jews together over a conference call or Zoom, you have a minyan. And that's across various halachic authorities right now in various, I'll say, degrees of strictness. So that's something that you could do. If you want to pray when other people are praying, it's a good thing to do. It's like that orientation, if you will. So I was informed that My Jewish Learning, what's it called? MyJewishLearning.com or org. Look for My Jewish Learning. Google that. They are now running a directory of synagogues that are streaming their services, including daily prayer services 3 times a day. So we are streaming our services on Friday night at 7:30 Pacific time, Saturday morning at 9:30 Pacific time, and you are more than welcome to join us. We're actually we've been distributing prayer books to people's homes, in an envelope, double wrapped, making sure we're safe. But we're distributing prayer books at home so that people can join us in that way. And feel free to join, us or another synagogue as it suits your schedule and your geography and your denominational bent in that way. And that's a great way to pray at home. So Stacy Gilbert Sharp from PJTC asked a great question. Aside from hanging a mezuzah on our doorposts, how else can we sanctify our home? Are there any other prayers to make our homes holy? You talked about making a space holy in our home, but what about the home itself? And so I'm going to give a practical answer and maybe a more metaphysical answer. So yes, having a mezuzah is a great way to sanctify a Jewish home. Last night I was teaching an Intro to Judaism class about Jewish holidays and the holiday Hanukkah, and that Hanukkah means dedication because they had to rededicate a temple that was kind of schmutzed up. The ceremony of putting a mezuzah on your doorpost, in your home, is called Chanukah Habayit. Is same word as Hanukkah, the holiday, because you're dedicating the home. You are distinguishing your home as a Jewish home, which is goes in a few different directions. I'll say you are saying to other people on your block or your new Instacart delivery person, as the case may be, this is a Jewish home. Like the people in this home are Jewish, and that and sort of abide by a Jewish life according to how they interpret it. But it's not just for people who don't live there. It's also for people who do live there. It's nice to have a mezuzah because when you walk into your home from outside, it's nice to have a reminder, I am now entering a sacred space. And in Jewish thought, again, this is a surprise for people who come to Judaism late in life, that a Jewish home is considered by our tradition a holy place, right? The holiest of human activities take place there. Eating together, loving one another, learning together. Everything in there has the capacity to be infused by holiness, and sometimes we need to be reminded of that. I'll be very frank. Like sometimes I'll be, maybe in the past I've come home from work and I've been grumpy about something that happened that day, and I walk in grumpy and I spread the grumpy around. And on my best day, maybe I see a mezuzah on my way in and say, I'm going to take that grumpy, I'm going to leave it outside, and no giggling over there. I'm going to take that grumpy, I'm going to leave it outside. I said no giggling. And hopefully it will remind me that I'm entering a sacred space. So that's how you can make a home holy. If you're putting a mezuzah on your door, I want to give the whole range of options here in the sense that this is what the Mishnah Berurah does with a lot of things. It's a commentary on the Jewish law code. The Shulchan Aruch wants to acknowledge the realities of people's lives. Like I recently lived in a home that had like 17 doorways. I'm not bragging. It happened to be, it was this freak of architecture, had 17 different doorways in this home. And I'm like, dude, that's going to take forever. And it did. But what if you don't have 17 mezuzahs? Like I didn't have 17 mezuzahs when we moved in. So if you can afford one mezuzah, right? And I think the cheapest I've seen those is like $10. If you can only afford one mezuzah, you put it on the front door of your home, right? That's your or whatever your main port of entry is. And some people who live in apartments, they only have the one front door, right? So if you have a front door and a back door, if you can afford a second mezuzah, you put the second mezuzah on the back door, right? You should cover the outside first to sort of encapsulate the whole home. Then within the home, as you are able to accumulate these sacred objects, you can put them on the bedrooms, put them on those places where we sleep, where we rejuvenate ourselves, where we pray for God to lie us down in peace and wake us up in peace. The bedrooms are a good next group. And like prayer, you can put a mezuzah on any doorway in the house. We typically don't put it on the bathroom door. Now, that's not to say that that's not also a necessary activity for life of people created in the image of God. In fact, there is one of the longest blessings that we have is the blessing that the tradition gives us to say after we go to the bathroom. And typically that's written on a card. Sometimes, at least in our Hebrew school, that's written on a card outside the bathroom door. But in any case, you can put a mezuzah on any doorway in your home. We typically don't put it on the bathroom door or on like a closet door. Any room that you might accidentally or on purpose sleep in is considered a dwelling place. So that's one way to dedicate your home. But that's not the only way. And can you have a holy home without a mezuzah? Absolutely. This gets into my more philosophical answer. Holiness is as holiness does. Like you have holiness in your home to the extent that you have mindfulness in your home, that you are careful about how you talk to other people, that you are careful about how you show love to other people. If you do things in your home that uplift you, spiritually, morally, what have you, that is how you make a holy home. Do you have books in your home? Do you have Jewish books in your home? Do you have prayer books in your home? Do you have copies of a chumash in your home? That's again not chiding anyone, but this showed one of my rabbi colleagues put this on in a rabbi Facebook group. What we're learning right now is that a lot of our congregants don't have prayer books at home, and are challenged, even as they're joining our live streaming, that they need to have a prayer book at home. And so now we're encouraging people to have prayer books in their home. And somebody was asking me, like, okay, do we need to like put the temple's name in it and put a microchip and LoJack the thing and make sure nobody steals one of our prayer books? And they weren't that mean about it. I'm just making a caricature. I was like, look, what's the worst thing that could happen is more people have prayer books in their home, and it's got their, and we have their name because they asked for it, and it's got our name in it. But God, worst case scenario, we have more prayer books in more Jewish homes. I think that's a good day, frankly. So. Stacy says, thank you. We also make our kitchen table holy when we bless our food. Absolutely. There's so many things that we can do to sanctify our everyday life that are just built into the Jewish tradition. Every time you say a blessing over something you're about to eat, every time you make, I'll say, kosher decisions about what you're eating in the first place, that elevates your kitchen. That elevates your menu. And God willing, it elevates the person who winds up eating that stuff. So there's all sorts of ways you can infuse your home and your daily life with Jewish tradition, whether or not you get to step into a synagogue this week, as so many of us sadly can't. So I want to close this out. We've been talking for a little while now. Really appreciate everybody who's joined us. Some really great questions about online stuff for the high holidays. How do we sanctify our homes with Jewish traditions? How do we just carve out a space for peace and quiet? And while you're there, prayer. I do want to close with this kavanah from this intention from Rabbi Nachman of Breslov, who was one of my great teachers across the centuries, I'll say. I never met the guy. Actually died of tuberculosis, I think, younger than I am now, a couple of 100 years ago, if I'm not mistaken. But still, his teachings come across the ages, and the way he said it was, and I'm translating because I'm pretty sure he didn't speak English, you should be able to talk to God like you talk to a friend. And the more I ruminate on that, like the more nuance I get out of it personally. Like, you should talk to God like you talk to a friend. And prayer books are great. The script we give you is great. I actually find it very helpful. It certainly organizes, what I have to say to God when I don't know what to say. But if you talk to God like you're talking to a friend, nothing's going wrong, right? You're not praying wrong. You're not praying un-Jewishly. If you talk to God like you're talking to an intimate friend who knows you as you really are, warts and all, funny stories and all, occasionally and you could talk to God, if you talk to a friend, sometimes you could talk to your friends when you're angry with them. And the best friendships endure that. Like, look, I'm mad at you because of this thing you did that one time, or I'm mad about this situation and I need to yell. And God's that friend that's like, all right, let it out, bud. And, we'll still be friends after this. And so that's, if you're looking for ways to pray at home and you can't get your mind around saying the synagogue-y prayers outside of the synagogue, start with talking to God like you're talking to a friend. Start where you are with what you have in the place that you are at, and that is kosher. So with that, I want to go ahead and wrap up today's broadcast. We're going to be doing this every day, every weekday. Every Monday through Friday, not Jewish weekdays, that's 6 days a week, but every Monday, every day, Monday through Friday, 3 p.m., we will be here on the PJTC Facebook page, on our PJTC YouTube channel, and also at twitch.tv/Pasadena Jewish. So thank you all for being here. We've got Mellow Moon says, I'm Christian, but your words are very inspiring. Bless you. Thank you so much for that. Kay Dixie, thank you. It says, thank you for the learning opportunity. Thank you for being here. Kay Dixie and Mellow Moons and Stacy and D. Willexen and Triggers and Viv. And I saw Carla in here as well, and Kathy, and so many great friends, old and new. Thank you for joining us. Until next time, Pasadenans and heroes, I've been your friendly neighborhood rabbi, John Carrier, and I wish you good health, safety, safe distances, and peace.
Mm-hmm.